Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, where I cut through the noise and fast track your journey to better health. I'm your host, Sara Banta, CEO and founder of Accelerated Health Products and certified by the National Association of Nutritional Professionals. I'm here to share the latest on supplements, wellness hacks, and natural health solutions that actually work, from boosting energy to detoxing to balancing hormones and everything in between. I will help you reach your optimal health. So let's dive in. Super excited to have our guest, Philip Pape, on today. He's the host of Wits Weights, a top 1% nutrition podcast where complex science meets real world results. And that's what it's about, the results. We don't care about the science. We just want results, right? Known as the Physique Engineer, he combines his engineering background with evidence-based nutrition expertise to help people build stronger, leaner, and healthier bodies without using the usual fitness industry confusion. Welcome, Philip. How are you today?
Sara, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited because we are just so aligned in so many ways. And these discussions, we can't have too many of them because there's so much confusion out there. I mean, keto, carnivore, and now the sugar diet. Like, people are like, wait, what? And cardio, heavy lifting, rest, adrenals. There's so many things that are affecting people's results or lack thereof. So I'm excited to dive in. So why don't you give us just a background of where your passion comes for all of this?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned both cutting through the noise and confusion, right? Because we're all confused, but I think worse than that, there are people in the industry who state with confidence things that aren't true. And that's what we have to watch out for. And when I reached out to you, when we connected on this, you could sense my skepticism probably when I replied regarding like topics to speak on, right? I think for having you on my show as well. And it comes from my own skepticism when I've done so many things that I'm told are going to work and then they don't, from dieting, very restrictive dieting over the years, to training the wrong way. I did CrossFit for many years, then later on got into strength training. I did all the low carb and restrictive type diets until I got to a more flexible approach. And I know you've had guests on to talk about all the different areas of health, like thyroid health and longevity and things like that. And people, I would think, want to go to the 1% rather than focus on the foundations. Mm-hmm. And so for me, as an engineer by background, managing large teams and technical teams for over 20 years, I brought to bear that analytical mindset, that skepticism, that curiosity to solve things to the human body, but also the human mind, because a lot of this is psychological. So kind of the big picture is, I like to use systems and data, but also combine it with the squishiness of being a human. Yeah. And at the end of the day, the evidence I care about the most for you is you, right? Like, at the end of the day, you have to test and experiment on yourself to figure out what works. So that's the big picture.
I love that you just straight out of the box mentioned the mental aspect, because if you look in the mirror and you think that you're getting fat, you're going to get fat. I don't care what you put in your mouth, right? Or vice versa. And there's studies on working out in front of mirrors and without your shirt on, you might get a bigger pump than if you don't, which is just a side point. But let's talk about this second half of our life after 40. I mean, men and women are different, but I can tell you things aren't as easy for my husband, just like they are for me and all of my clients that are going, I haven't changed a thing. I don't eat a morsel of sugar. I work out like I have always worked out, and the scale is going up. So let's talk about this common narrative behind that metabolic decline that we're just going to have to succumb to.
Yeah, I think when you mention men and women, that's where some of the misinformation comes from. First of all, claiming that either men and women are exactly the same and do everything the same, or no, women and men have to do everything totally different, right? And there's nuance because it's not just the gender differences perhaps, but it's individual differences. I just recorded an episode on the menopause transition, right? It's at 3.5 on average year window where you almost seem like a different person because the estrogen drops, the FSH rises, and the way your metabolism responds is very different than it was even 2 years ago or 1 year ago. For men, it's the drop in testosterone, right? And what's happening is when you talk about age-related inevitable decline of your metabolism, the facts tell us that yes, that happens, but not necessarily why we think. It's not just because of age or just because of hormones. It is the loss of muscle mass that begins in our 30s. That's one of the biggest pieces of it of all. It's the more sedentary, high stress, high alert, high sympathetic nervous system lifestyle, right? It's the stress from our obligations being older. I mean, men and women, as we get into our 40s and 50s, we have families, we have so much going on. And yes, it could be hormones and other changes, but what happens is people are not strength training. They're not eating for their goals. They're probably under eating, right? People are dieting, yo-yo dieting for years and years and years, and it all cascades. And that goes back to my earlier comment about the foundations. Like for many of us, we literally just have to change a couple key things in our life to start mitigating those massively and get the confidence back. Get the confidence back, Sarah, because we just get frustrated. Why is the scale going up? Or here's the other problem. Why is the scale not really going up, but I'm looking worse and I'm feeling fatter and lower energy? And it all comes down to body composition and your lifestyle for the most part.
And being a woman growing up in the 90s, we just were told to look at the scale, just the regular scale that doesn't tell you anything but gravity. And, you know, I finally broke down and bought a body pod and absolutely recommend it for everybody because it tells you your water breakdown, which you're going to carry extra water during your menstrual cycle possibly, or if you haven't had a bowel movement, things that, you know, will fluctuate the scale, but doesn't tell you if you've lost muscle or fat or gained whatever. But you're right. People will maybe stay the same on the scale, but not realize that their metabolism is lowering because their muscle mass has gone down and their fat has gone up as they age, but they don't know. You know, I'm pretty sensitive to my body. You are. But the normal person isn't that in tune with muscle versus fat composition. Their pants might feel the same, you know, things like that. So I want to get into what are those key things that are going to drop or increase that metabolism.
Yeah, and just to comment on the scale weight, the two most common issues I face on a daily basis with clients is fear over scale weight and uncertainty about why it changes, and then the psychological piece of motivation and accountability and all that fun stuff, right? Which is why we have coaches. And regarding the scale weight, I wish that we could just eliminate it for about a month for someone in other words, to force them to use other metrics to understand how their body is changing or feeling or whatnot from biofeedback, right? How is your digestion? Your digestion can tell you a lot about what's going on. How's your sleep and hunger? How are you performing in the gym? Are your numbers going up? Are you feeling stronger? How is your 3 p.m. energy, right? Like all of these things, your sleep, your stress, tell you a lot more than the scale does. And those are things that are tied to your metabolism, which is the question you asked. Is the metabolic decline, first of all, your metabolism can never break. It can never fail. It's fundamental to your human physiology. It's not going away till the day you die. It's there. The problem is it's very dynamic and very responsive. So not only can it adapt to what you're doing and to the stress that you have on your body, but it can adapt very wildly, kind of like scale weight, right? Scale weight can go up and down due to fluid having nothing to do with fat mass. Well, your metabolism can adapt. If you are under eating, it's going to adapt. If you are, all the other things we talked about with stress, sleep, and everything else, and it's doing what it's programmed to do. It's trying to keep you at homeostasis. So again, I think of your recent guest talking about thyroid health. Yeah. Thyroid drops by 6% on average when you cut calories by 500. Below your maintenance, and that's normal. And guess what happens when you eat more again? It's going to recover back to full, its full situation. So your body has only so many resources. It's going to start turning things off. Reproductive hormones are at the top of the list because you don't need to create babies when you're trying to survive. Right?
No,
so it just starts to tick those things off. Yeah.
I do not want a fourth baby at the age of 49, please. And the stressors of life, I mean, like you're saying, and the guest was Dr. Eric Balkovich, is so profound yet so common sense what he's saying. Your cells are just adapting to the current state of health. And if you are under massive emotional stress or physiological stress from chronic cardio or from fighting a virus, or your liver is just struggling, your body's going to adapt, send the energy to where it needs to survive, lower the metabolic rate, increase the fat storage around the gut so that, if you're attacked by that tiger, it's going to protect your organs that are expensive and eat away the muscles on your legs and your arms. That is normal. That is a good thing. That is your body responding in the appropriate manner. We don't like it. So if we don't like it, we need to change the stressors, right? And take those out. So I want to talk about some of the stressors that people are engaging in, and they think they're healthy. The chronic cardio, working out wrong, maybe not working out, not, staying up late at night, thinking we don't need sleep, those types of things.
No, for sure. And there are some major buckets, right? There are major buckets. The first one, or not the first one, the ones that come to mind are going to be your energy balance, right? The amount of energy coming in, the calories coming in, not even what you eat or how much protein or anything else, just the total amount of energy. A vast majority of women, we just know this, are in a low energy state and have dieted 100 times in their life. And the more you diet, the more you exacerbate that set point and make it more difficult. But, the past is in the past. So what do you do going forward? So under eating, not fueling properly for what you're trying to do is a big one. Another one is absolutely strength training. For me, that's a non-negotiable for every human being. That's just my position on it. And there's a lot of reasons we can say that. We can talk about the fact that muscle is the most anti-inflammatory thing that you have. Strength training itself is more anti-inflammatory than any other practice you can do based on like literally blood markers like CRP and ILK6 and everything that tells us we're inflamed. We know that being sedentary is one of the most inflammatory things we can do. The lack of blood flow, the sitting down behind a desk all day is one of the most inflammatory. And I talk about inflammation because I think there's misconceptions where we get into food-based inflammation when in reality, lifestyle-based inflammation is having the biggest mover for you when we talk about this. What else? So, we talked about having muscle mass. We talked about sleep and stress as well, recovery. So a lot of older folks, women, anybody over 40, 50, they're just under-recovered. I see it all the time. You mentioned the chronic cardio, doing too much cardio, not sleeping enough, going to the gym and thinking you're working out for strength and muscle, but really you're just doing more cardio with light dumbbells, right? So those are kind of the big pillars. And when I think of inflammation specifically and the diet, I think of protein and fiber as well, right? We are eating usually a highly processed diet, and it's not about what you eat. It's more about the pattern, the overall dietary pattern. Are you prioritizing protein for your muscle? Are you prioritizing fiber for lots of reasons, right? For gut health. Are you prioritizing the amount of calories you eat? So those are the pillars.
So when you talk about protein, let's get into specifics, because women, yes, they are under eating protein. I go to lunch or dinner with my girlfriends and they get the salads, or they're eating from the bread basket and having some wine, but then they don't order a meal. They'll order a little appetizer, or there's never a good portion of protein that they're eating in that meal. And I don't know what it is, because I've never been afraid of protein. I always feel good. My brain feels good on it. It's not just my muscles, my energy does. So what amount of protein do you recommend? And is it different for men and women? Is it different for their activity level?
Yeah. Before answering the amount, like I think if I told you the amount and you said, great, what do I do? How do I get that? Your question about why is really important. We don't talk about it enough. If you think of the average diet, it's like 5 or 10% protein, right? And if we think of the availability of food, what's cheaper? What's the cheapest food? It's carbs and fats and sugars and processed foods, right? In fact, people talk about how you don't have enough money to eat healthy, and I think it's a crock of BS, because when you look at what it takes to eat healthy, it's actually quite affordable when you're making your own food. That's the key. So that's partly why we're not getting enough protein. I think there's also maybe a stigma from past studies and misinformation about protein related to kidneys that some people still hold on to, perhaps, which is totally not. There's really no upper limit to protein for the vast majority of people. And then why you want protein is to build and preserve muscle, but it's also prevents the breakdown of muscle mass. It also helps feel fuller. It also burns more calories than carbs and fats when you digest them, right? So there's a lot of great reasons to have protein. The amount is going to be, the evidence tells us 0.7 to 1 grams per pound of body weight is the range I usually use. But it's highly dependent on your activity, your age, and so on. I would say, though, for most people, they're getting like 0.3. They're getting like 0.2, right? They're getting trace amounts. And all you've got to do is say, include protein first in every meal. Right? Include protein first in every meal as just a very simple barrier. The second thing a lot of people aren't doing is even tracking their food in any way. So I'm a big advocate of tracking just for the awareness. Even if you're not a tracker, you don't like to track or log food, just do it for awareness. Use a piece of paper. I don't care. Use an app, a piece of paper, and just write it down and try to go online and Google, how many grams are in this size bit of meat or dairy or what have you. And if you do those two things, you're going to be a lot better off. And then if you are an athlete, if you're a strength trainer, or if you're in fat loss, you might need even more, like closer to 1.2 grams per pound.
Yeah, it's my key. It's the macro that it's non-negotiable,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And then people will play around with increasing and lowering fat versus carbs, right? The goal is not to have high fat, high carb. That's where you get in trouble. And that's where the processed foods come in, because when you combine the fats and the carbs and the salt, God, it tastes good. And the brain says, I want more. And then there's no protein in there to tell your brain that, okay, I've gotten enough nutrition. So I keep eating. And the great thing about protein, you're never going to binge on a ribeye steak. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have 2 ribeye steaks, but that's a lot, and I can't have that third. But you give me a pint of Ben and Jerry's or 2, I'll finish it, no problem. But it is great at satisfying that hunger. But it also, your body is saying, oh my goodness, I love this to fuel my muscles. And it's stabilizing that blood sugar and making you not hangry and feeling more stable, and sleep is better. But I also want to talk about how can it support the muscles and fat loss at the same time.
Yeah, so you mentioned it should be the anchor macro, and there's a lot of confusion here. So when I'm working with a client or recommending someone who wants to go into fat loss, I'll suggest spending 6 to 8 weeks at maintenance, like trying to find your maintenance calories and eating enough, eating more food, adding in the nutritious things you want, starting with protein, but also high fiber containing foods, nutrient dense foods, and really increasing that food volume. Because while you cannot eat more and lose weight technically calorie wise, you could absolutely eat more food volume wise and lose weight. And that's the key. So if you start there, if you train, if you're walking more, if you're having that kind of active lifestyle first without putting the stress or fat loss on your body, it's going to make the fat loss a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Then when you go into fat loss, you're right, Sarah, one of the biggest issues is, oh my God, I'm down to 1,600 or 1,500 or maybe 1,200 calories. And you're telling me to eat, 140 grams of protein. That leaves very little for the fats and carbs. That's a true statement. Like, that is a true statement. It's going to look like a low carb diet, or even a keto, not keto because keto is high fat, but it's going to look low carb, not because lowering carbs is good for some reason. It's just because you don't have much room for it. So in those cases, having gone through the process first of identifying the leaner meats, the leaner forms of dairy and plant foods, right? The higher nutrient density, air popcorn with salt instead of kettle corn, like all these little choices we can make to still have a flexible, fun diet. Make your pizza at home and double the protein rather than buying your greasy pizza with hardly any protein, right? Like, huge difference in the macro ratio there. And then when you go into fat loss, it is a matter of having the guardrails and the flexibility anchored on protein. Now, some clients might, or some people listening might be so energy starved during fat loss that they're going to have to really have realistic expectations. Do we slow the rate of loss and eat more? Or do we trade off some of that protein and give it to, say, carbs for the energy, or maybe fat for the energy? And that's where I talk about personalization. There's no one right answer. You have to figure it out.
When you take most women who have dieted so much and they're already on such a low calorie diet, I mean, women that are eating 800 to 1,000 calories, they're doing an hour of cardio a day and plus this and that and this and that, there's no room to go. And this thought of, you're going to ask me to eat more food and essentially reverse diet, how do you get them over that mental hurdle of trusting you? Because I've been in that mindset where it's like, I know you're talking about someone else. That's not going to work for me, but I've done it. And it's crazy how the body says, oh, she's giving me more food. I can ramp up that metabolism. I can have more energy. And then the other thing that happens is it's like, okay, I'm a little fidgety because I've got all this energy now. So I'm going to go do a little more activity. Whereas if you're on that low calorie restriction mindset, you're going to sit on the couch a little more. You're not going to get up and go do those extra errands that you might if you have been eating a little more and your body says, okay, now I have a higher metabolism.
Yeah, I think you answered the question for me already, but effectively that's the process we have to go through, is raising that metabolism. You mentioned reverse dieting. So I actually use a phrase called recovery dieting, and there's a subtle difference. So reverse dieting would be increasing your calories slowly over time until you find your true maintenance, right? Perfectly good approach for anybody who wants to go through that process. The way I like to do it is faster and a little more precise. And again, that's where like the engineering thing comes into play. If we can track your food and weight very specifically, like on a daily basis, right? Which again, that's not for everyone, but if you hire me, that's what you're going to do. Then we will have the data as we start to average that data within about 2 to 3 weeks to know your true metabolism. And then we can quickly jump there. Like we don't have to reverse diet. We just quickly jump to that point. For some women, it's like too much food, which I love when that's the problem. They're like, I don't know if I could eat this much. I'm like, good. I like that that's the case, because you feel like your body is now normalizing the energy needs versus what you're eating. A lot of women eating the 800, 900 calories and not losing weight, it's because their metabolism's down regulated. And so they're eating like a diet without the results of a diet. How frustrating is that? Right? So if we can jump up, now the fear is, oh my God, I'm going to jump up and I'm going to gain all the weight back. Well, this is where I have to combine like some of the logical thinking with the emotional thinking. First of all, what caused you to gain the weight in the first place? Probably a couple of things. First, your whole lifetime of lack of control, lack of awareness, behaviors. It's fine. I'm not blaming you. It's just what happened, right? And most of us gain weight around the holidays, and it takes time. It's not like it happens instantly. It takes time. However, there are some people that it does happen quickly, like women in the menopause transition. That is a real experience. I've seen it. I'm not going to gaslight anyone about that, where all of a sudden you gain 10 pounds in 6 months. Like, what the hell happened here? And so in either case, I have to apply some logic and say, okay, what we're going to do is get as much data about your body, about your weight, about your body composition, about your biofeedback, and then look at how that correlates with what's happening. And as the scale changes, we're going to talk through each touch point. There's going to be the initial weight bump from fluid, from this, from that, from the other, sodium. There's going to be the weight bump from carbs. There's going to be the fluctuations that occur when you start training from inflammation, right? So we kind of have to logically break it down. And at the end of the day, Sarah, when somebody calls me and says, help, my weight jumped up 3 pounds yesterday, I say, all right, let's take a step back. Let's do the math. How much is a pound of fat? 3,500 calories. How much would you have to overeat to get 3 pounds fatter? You have to eat over 10,000 calories beyond your energy needs right now. Do you think you're doing that? Right. And it's like, okay, I see your point. And it's tough, right? It's tough. But then the next day the weight drops 2 pounds. And they're like, oh, interesting. We don't want to overreact to that either. Be like, yes, my weight dropped 2 pounds. Okay. No, it's all fluid, and the fat changes happen very slowly over time. And that's what we're going to control too.
So with that, and maybe, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, if someone's using a body composition scale and they have that 3 pound jump in a day and they've just started doing what you're talking about, how much of that, if it's inflammation or fluid retention, how much of that is going to show up as false fat versus false muscle?
I personally don't like those devices. So I'm just going to just lay it out there. There's like a hierarchy of body fat measurement, like DEXA usually is near the top, or research grade, electrodes where they have 4 electrodes, top of your body, bottom of your body. The BIA devices tend to be more near the bottom. Now, that's not to say that they're useless, because I think if under the same conditions, like, first thing in the morning, you haven't eaten yet, you're in your underwear, like you weigh yourself, over time, the trend can be very helpful. I honestly can't answer the question about the fluid versus muscle, organ, and fat, whether that's going to change falsely more or less than just the inherent falseness of the number to begin with. So my opinion is keep it easy and simple and don't overthink. If you take tape measurements for men, that's neck and waist, for women, that's neck, waist, hips, and then go to Google and type in Navy formula, that's going to give you a close enough approximation of your body fat that you can trend over time and see if you're gaining or losing. That's my approach.
Okay, the neck. That's really interesting.
Yes.
So people gain weight around their neck.
They gain muscle when the neck is larger.
Okay.
And then they lose fat when the waist is smaller. And then women also, hips come into play. It's kind of funny because men don't need to measure their hips for the formula.
I've never even thought about the neck size as in relation to your muscle. But that is,
it's very subtle. It's very subtle. It doesn't change very much. Most women I see, like at most a 1-inch variance in their neck. It's really the waist that makes the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really interesting. So you would not use the regular bathroom scale or a body composition scale?
I use the regular scale just to get scale weight every day. Like I like weighing every day. And there's actually a study that was conducted, I think it was last year. It was reviewed in Dr. Bill Campbell's research review, where they compared 5 days of weigh-ins to 7 days of weigh-ins. Kind of weird, right? They compared like sporadic weigh-ins to 5 days to 7 days. And they found that the 7 days had the best result. And the theory being that, first of all, it's a habit, it's consistent. Secondly, you start to reconcile with the logic that, hey, this maybe isn't fat because look how much it changes. And then thirdly, you get the precision of averaging the number more accurately. You're not like measuring high and low points randomly and not knowing what it is.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. So let's get back to metabolism and the activity and why resistance training would be more important than cardio for the long-term results.
Oh, absolutely. So the first thing that comes to mind with resistance training for people, which I'm going to kind of poke as a not a myth, but like it's overblown, is the fact that your muscle is metabolically active. It's expensive, so it burns more calories. That is true, but it's only about 5 to 9 calories per pound of muscle. Now, I say only, if you add 10 pounds of muscle, which anyone can do, men, women, that is another 100 calories a day, right? But if your metabolism has downregulated by 600 or 800 calories because of your lifestyle, it's not going to, offset that. More importantly is all the cascading effects of training and having muscle on your metabolism. There are lots of physiological things going on all the way down to the mitochondrial level where fat cells communicate, or muscle cells communicate with fat cells, and you actually become better at partitioning nutrients and burning fat. But the most important thing, Sarah, is the insulin sensitivity. In my mind, that is the biggest reason muscle is anti-inflammatory, is you are now a huge sink for glucose. So I just saw a reel somebody posted. They had an Uber car, and they're like, when your insulin spikes from eating carbs, your body's either going to shuttle the sugar over into your fat, or it's going to shuttle over to your muscle. And if your muscle's small, it's full. It doesn't have anywhere to go. So it's going to go to fat. And I think that's a great analogy, because the more muscle you have, the more you can eat and use carbs efficiently. And then you're going to burn more fat. And then it's a vicious cycle, a virtuous cycle of your metabolism going up. Plus, guess what? You can be heavier on the scale and leaner. Like it blows people's mind, but you can have lower body fat percentage, but be heavier on the scale. Now you're just burning more calories. What else? You lift more in the gym. What else? You're able to move your body and do more things all the time. So all of those things burn just more and more and more calories because you have more muscle.
Yeah. And I've heard you talk about bulking up and then cutting. And, I'm not going to lie. Like as a female, I'm like, I want to build muscle, but the whole idea of bulking and then cutting, it's a little frightening. And probably because most of us have been in the state where we can't lose weight,
Mhm.
and we can't be in control of it. But I'm just trying to think, for the population over 40, is this a realistic strategy, or is this just for people like you that are, or that are in the gym all the time, bodybuilding mindset, or is it for the woman that's in her 40s and 50s?
Yeah. By the way, I'm 40, I'm almost 45, and I didn't really start any of this properly until I was almost 40. So just so you know, like, I want to put it in perspective. So first of all, men and women build muscle at the same rate. That surprises a lot of people, but women have a lower starting point. Obviously, they have more fat and less muscle when they start in life due to testosterone, puberty, and everything. But from that point to the day they die, men and women can build muscle at the same rate. So given that's the case, don't you want to give yourself the best chance to add that metabolically active muscle and improve your metabolism, make fat loss easier? Okay, the answer is probably yes. So then how do you do it? Well, there are some amazing people out there, like Holly Baxter. She's a famous, she used to be married to Lane Norton. She was on the show. Yeah. And she is very good at helping women who want to do body recomposition and not gain or lose too much weight. And at the same time, her first answer to my first question of what are women not doing is muscle building phase, like a muscle building phase. Now, that doesn't have to mean gaining 10, 15, 20 pounds. It could mean gaining like 3 or 4 pounds on the scale over 6 months, all of it muscle. It's just this tiny nudge in a pro-energetic state where you're in an anabolic state. That's called a muscle building, muscle tissue building state, where you're not depriving your body of any resource whatsoever, right? It's like that tank is full and overflowing. And that overflow is now going to muscle. It's not going to fat. That's kind of the way to think about it. When the fear comes from probably your history. You weren't building muscle. And so, of course, when you gain weight, where did it go? Fat, just like the little Uber example. It's all going to go to fat. So now you're shuttling it to muscle. Now, if you want to do it faster and more efficiently, I've worked with plenty of women, had this fear, and they did gain like 8 pounds or 10 pounds over 6 months. That really still is not a lot. I mean, it depends on your starting point. When you consider that half or more of that is muscle. Mm-hmm. And then when you cut the weight, which gets a little bit easier each time, we have that phenomenon I just talked about. You can be a little heavier and you're leaner and you look better. And at the end of the day, I don't care about the scale weight for you. I care you've got the muscle definition you want, you've got that nice cut back, you've got the butt you want, the abs, whatever. I mean, physique's important for a lot of people and it drives a lot of the other health related activities, and I'm totally cool with that. So those are my thoughts.
So as you are bulking and you might be gaining a little fat with the muscle, you're also revving up your metabolism because you're eating more. Your body starts trusting you. So when you cut your calories, it's not from 1,000 calories down to 500 calories. Right. It's from maybe 2,500 calories down to 2,000 calories, which is still a healthy amount of calories. And your body's trusting you, and you're able to lose that fat while keeping the muscle. Am I saying this correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you're playing devil's advocate, Sarah, because you know all this stuff. But yeah, the ability to live 9 to 10 months out of the year not dieting. How refreshing is that? Like, I believe a lot of women listening are doing the opposite. Probably they're probably constantly trying to diet. It's just hitting the wall. Let's just give the body what it wants and needs, and you're going to feel great. What I find, Sarah, is there's a lot of other wins that come from this process that are unexpected, like that feeling in the gym of power and strength that you didn't have. Like, you've been listening to the influencers tell you to use progressive overload, and somehow you just can't lift more. Well, guess what? You're not eating. Now that you're eating, you're lifting more, and it just all starts to cascade. So yeah, you eat more. What's funny is metabolic adaptation works both ways. So usually what happens is the first month or two, your metabolism kind of can't figure out what's going on yet. It's like, wow, you're actually well fed here. You're not starving me anymore. What's going on? And then it starts to figure it out. Like hormonally, your leptin, your ghrelin, your thyroid, everything. It says, wait, we've got so much coming in. We just can go all out and be inefficient with those calories now and just start burning them like a big, gas guzzling engine. And you start to see the metabolism ramp up too fast for some people, where they're like, can't keep up with it with the food. That's where you hear the challenges with bulking, with trying to stuff yourself, which we don't want to do. But at the same time, it's kind of an interesting new problem that arises.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a 22-year-old son, and he was a rower in high school, and he would eat a ton of food. And we're thinking, oh, it's because he's working out so much. Well, now he's 22 and he's very active on his own. He's not on a team of any sort. And he out eats his friends, and he's, 10 to 13% body fat. So he's not getting the beer belly or the typical 20-year-old bod. And I'm sitting there going, your food intake is going to be a huge expense when you're on your own because his metabolism is so high. And I said, you stop eating that much, I bet you will be able to slow down your metabolism. So he's the opposite of what we're talking about. Okay, so there's something that I haven't really touched on this show much, and I'm really curious about it selfishly, blood flow restriction. So in the gym, what is it? What's the benefit of it? Is it for everybody?
Yeah, blood flow restriction training, BFR. I'm not an expert, so I've talked about it like twice on the show, and I do it a little bit myself, but you're effectively occluding what they call, you're basically blocking blood flow in your upper extremity. So either your upper arm or your upper leg with a cuff. And so it could be either a manual cuff or an inflatable like cuff with a pump. And the goal is to be able to train with much lower loads, much lower weight on the bar or isolation or machine or whatever you're using, and get a similar effect as if you were training heavier. So it's really good for rehab. It's really good for finisher sets. Like if you're doing barbell curls or you're doing like high rep finisher squats for your quads or something after you've done the barbell stuff. It's a good complement, or barbell free weights machines. It's a good complement to your traditional lifting. And I actually spoke with the owner of Smart Cuffs, which is the brand I have, on my show. If anybody wants to go back and hear it, where he talks about all the science behind it. That's the extent that I know, Sarah. I think it's just like a fun add-on. If you're not training to begin with, like, don't even worry about it.
Right. Well, we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure that we've touched on every myth out there, that is the roadblock for the population, and especially in the day of Ozempics and semaglutide, where people are really just focused on the scale and losing that weight and appetite control, and they're not looking at their muscle. And Philip, I live in Southern California in Newport Beach, which I believe is worse than Beverly Hills when it comes to this stuff. And I'm seeing a lot of women who lost a ton of weight real quick, and now they're either off of it or it stopped working, and now they look older because they have put on some weight and it's not muscle. So they've lost the fat and the muscle. And I'm not saying that Ozempic makes you lose muscle. It's more of what you end up eating. But what are the myths that we have not covered today that you want to make sure that we go over?
Yeah, I do want to hit on that real quick because I totally agree. It's not the drug; it's the fact that the drug causes you to crash diet, and you're just losing weight so quickly that you also lose muscle. And I think that's important to know, even when you're not taking the drugs, that the way most people diet is very fast, very aggressive. They cut, they restrict. Wouldn't you rather be in a little bit more control, eat more, have more delicious food, and do it the right way? And then you won't lose the muscle. But you have to be strength training. If you're taking one of those drugs and you are not strength training, you're setting yourself up for the world of hurt, because you're going to get a fatter body composition before long once you stop the drugs. Where do I start with the myths? Which one do you hear the most about that we haven't covered, Sarah? Because I could probably come up with
right now, the whole diet wars. You've got the keto, and you've got the Jay Feldman, and now you got the sugar diet. You've got all of these things. And what I tend to do is say, hey, look, we didn't have any of these conversations when there was no processed food. And so everyone is just trying to cut out a macro, which essentially gets you to caloric restriction of some sort. And of course, you're going to lose weight when you calorically restrict, at least initially. So maybe touching on the different diets and what are the macros that you recommend for people?
Yeah, I love that. I actually just had an episode come out about the carnivore diet, talking about fiber, right? Because one of the claims of carnivore is, because fiber is gone, they say, well, it's not necessary. And there's so much wrong with that, because even if you just looked at studies that said, compare low fiber diets to high fiber diets, what are the outcomes? The higher fiber by far has much better health outcomes and longevity outcomes. So I'm not going to experiment with my body by cutting out fiber. But anyway, part of the appeal comes from the simplicity, the sexiness of the diets. They're easy to market. And I understand that you're trying to help people initially by giving them a framework to follow. The problem is restriction of what you eat is not sustainable, because you are going to cut out things that you crave, that you want, that you enjoy. And that's no fun, first of all. Right. And it's also not sustainable. We know from studies comparing rigid diets where you cut out specific foods or have meal plans versus flexible diets where you have the same calories, but you have macro targets. Those tend to be the ones that you can sustain the results. Both of them, you can lose weight or lose fat, but only one allows you to sustain it, because when you're done with the keto or the carnivore, whatever, getting to your target, what next? Are you going to eat keto the rest of your life? And yeah, a tiny percentage of people maybe can eat just like meat, or just eggs. Go for it. But if that's the only reason you're doing it, for body composition, health, and fat loss, understand that the benefits people report from carnivore and keto and everything else are real benefits they're getting, but it's not for the reason you think. It's not because you cut out carbs. It's because, for example, carnivore is a great elimination diet. You've just cut out all plants. Now, most people would say, oh, that's terrible, right? You need plants. Yes, you do. However, there's a lot of intolerances and inflammatory situations with individuals with certain foods, and you don't know what they are until you cut them out. Right. So my philosophy is, if you go to carnivore and you start feeling great, good for you. That's a good starting point. That told you something. Now start adding in one at a time, either rice or, something easier on your stomach. Maybe it's, a fruit, something like that, and see, because that'll give you more options, more flavor, more taste, more enjoyment, more energy, the whole list goes on. So if you take any restrictive diet, veganism, vegetarianism, what are the big ones? Keto, carnivore, even Weight Watchers to me is kind of restrictive in its own way, because you're assigning points to specific foods, right? They're telling you what to eat. Is that, you're not going to last. You're not going to last. So instead, my guidelines are, we alluded to before, track your food and track your weight so you know how many calories you burn. Try to stay there, maintain your weight for, let's say, a month or two. And while you're doing that, add in the things like protein and fiber to meet the macro composition. Now, what does that look like? Okay, it looks like what we talked about, up to 1 gram per pound for protein. And then fats and carbs are really flexible. So if you want a number, 30% of your calories from fat. Start there. It's a good average for people. Women tend to eat less, men tend to eat more, just a thing I see. And then the rest is carbs. And when you're at that level, you're probably going to be eating, for most women, let's say, you're probably going to end up between 1,500 and 2,500 calories. Like, it's a huge range. I don't know. It depends on the person. And for men, it might be like 2,000 to 3,000, right? It's averages. And then within that, you're eating your body weight in protein. You're eating probably 30 to 80 grams of fat, and you're probably eating somewhere north of 100 grams of carbs. And that's the piece that people are like, "What? That's high carb." That I have clients eating 500 grams of carbs and they're thriving. So It's very flexible. That's the approach that works for people.
And it also depends on your insulin resistance and your current state of health and all the things. It is a moving target, and what you can eat today is probably going to be different than 6 months from now, depending on your current state of health. And I love that you bring up the carnivore as an elimination diet, and it is a great elimination diet to just say, hey, I'm going to stop, because all of the oxalates, and now there's the sulfur foods that can be triggering gut issues and brain issues. And we've got the spike protein that has really hijacked everything, and our food system is completely hijacked. My son's over in Europe on a trip right now, and he's like, Mom, I can eat anything over here. There's no toxins and my gut loves it all. And so there's all of that we're working around. And we didn't have all of these different diets, 30 years ago, because we were all eating real foods and there wasn't as many toxins, and our body just did what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Can I address some of that? Because I agree with what you're saying. That's where it gets very confusing, because we throw out the baby with the bathwater. We're like, well, everything's toxic or whatever. Right. I have a client from Israel. She's moving to back to the US after years over there. And she's already worried because she sees what the options are for food here. And she knows she's going to have to just make her own food. But even going to the grocery store, it's not the same kind of diversity and variety and options, even in the fresh foods. So that totally what you're saying makes sense and why it scares people. What I would say is the elimination diet is a really great approach to see and prove to yourself that you can or can't handle something. I've got clients who are afraid of foods because they just never ate them, right? Like I have a client who never had a potato before, which I was shocked. Like that is shocking to me. Never had, and he's asking for types of carbs to reintroduce. He hired me to actually eat more carbs because he wants the energy. He's a lifter. And I said, how about sweet potato or potato? Those are a good place to start. Most people don't have issues with them. And he cooked it. He ate it. He's like, this is great. And I said, try oats next. Oh, oats, it's great. But maybe get the what do you call it? Organic, because that's one of the ones susceptible to Roundup, glycophosphate, whatever it's called. So yeah, you have to be smart about it, but at the same time, don't like get overblown. If you have a processed food here or there, if you eat something on an irregular basis, the dosage makes the poison, right? It's not, my stomach can handle anything. So that's like pros and cons to that. Because I probably shouldn't be eating certain things, but I can't. Other clients, they have all sorts of autoimmune issues and whatever else, and they have to avoid things. But strength training actually helps mitigate some of that, Sarah, interestingly, because of the insulin sensitivity and the anti-inflammatory effects of it. Yeah.
And that goes right back to what I was saying as far as your current state of health, because I've been in periods where I can eat almost anything, and then where I have to be super restrictive because maybe I'm fighting a virus or my immune system is suppressed or things like that. So yeah, it is definitely not a death sentence or an ultimatum that you can never eat certain foods ever again, but just be your own doctor. Try to be sensitive to your own reaction, and inflammation is a huge sign. Like if the scale goes up 2 pounds tomorrow, it's not fat. We know that. It's not muscle. It's inflammation. Your body didn't like something that you did yesterday, and it could be a food that you ate that is causing water retention or bloat or constipation. So there's a lot of things that play into it. Philip, I knew it was going to go fast, and it did. Where can people find you and work with you?
Yeah, check out my podcast, Wits Weights. We're at well over 300 episodes now. Sarah, you're going to be on as well, right? And there's pretty much any question you can think of related to what we talked about today. You can find it. You can reach out to me. Go to witsandweights.com for all my stuff, blog articles, free resources, contact information. So Wits and Weights podcast, witsandweights.com.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. I love our conversation, and we are so aligned in so many ways. So thanks again, Philip.
Thanks. Great questions. Thanks for having me on, Sarah.
I love everything Philip was saying about the metabolism. Your metabolism is not broke, and strength training. It is doing so much. But what if you don't even have the energy to get off the couch? That's where some key supplements can come in. And that number one supplement, accelerating iodine, it acts as fuel for your thyroid, the organ that governs how fast or slow your body not only burns calories, but actually burns fat. It increases fat oxidation. It helps convert that inactive T4 into the active T3, which actually drives the fat burning and energy. And it's detoxing the halogens, the fluoride, the bromide, the chlorine that block iodine uptake in every cell and your thyroid. And of course, it helps with your brain and your depression as well, which might be keeping you on the couch and not in the gym, right? It also helps clear out radiation, heavy metals, even the spike protein residues that interfere with a metabolism. So why accelerating iodine over any other iodine? It's monoatomic iodine, one molecule of iodine in the most bioavailable form. It's enhanced with scalar frequencies, and then it is paired with a carrier of 200 proof, non-GMO, organic alcohol. No seaweed contaminants, no glycerin that's sticky or thick that can't get the iodine into the cells. It's unlike Lugal's or kelp-based iodines. It won't burden the liver, and it does not come with any side effects. So iodine is extremely important for not only men but women too, especially after the age of 40. And we talked about protein. You women are going, oh my God, I can't get 150 grams of protein in a day. That's where accelerated aminos comes in. This was designed for us women. It is amazing for my 22-year-old son or my 18-year-old daughter in her sports, but was designed for us. It provides not only the 9 essential amino acids, it has HMB, OKG, TMG, estrogen, and synactive. What does that mean? It prevents muscle breakdown, these ingredients, so that you're building on top of what you've already built. It increases ATP, increases the amount of output or performance in the gym. So you're actually doing more, lifting heavier to get better results. And it also helps with burning your fat. So it is really imperative for us women, especially, to increase that metabolism with that muscle growth, and accelerated aminos can help you. But what I've learned also is that blood sugar, right? Insulin resistance can really inhibit our success. And accelerated fast pairs strategically with intermittent fasting and with the iodine and the aminos to avoid pitfalls that women hit when they're fasting. And that's that hangriness, that's a lack of energy. Well, accelerated fast increases fat oxidation, boosts that mitochondrial health, supports that gentle detox of the liver, which is so important, rebalances the insulin, the cortisol, the thyroid hormones, and it's doing so in a non-stressful way. We want to lower that stress in our body. Stress is the killer. So it is going to help give you that stable energy, and your brain's going to say, hey, I'm burning fat. I don't need to eat a whole bunch of carbs right now for energy to go to the gym. Now, I'm not saying don't eat carbs later on, but it gives you this nice window in the morning, especially if you're doing a morning workout, to have that great energy of ketones and stable blood sugar to get the results that you need. And then when you pair it with the accelerated aminos that does not break a fast and the accelerated iodine, your metabolism goes up, your fat burning goes up, and your muscle building goes up. Kind of amazing, actually. And that's what I do every morning. So those 3 supplements will really help you with your metabolism and your muscle and your fat goals. So hopefully this was helpful. And I am super excited for you to have learned from Philip today. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you got something out of it. Let me know. Head to SaraBantaHealth.com for the health articles and more. Join the free group coaching on Telegram. There's no downside. I post every day. I answer your questions. And you can look up these supplements at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Use coupon code podcast10 to get 10% off your first order. And share this episode with your friends, your family, someone that needs to get off the couch, maybe get a little inspiration to spark up that metabolism after years of dieting. By doing this, it will help my podcast reach more people like you. You can find this podcast, Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and over 100 different platforms. Remember, I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.